There is an old man on a black volcanic rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea. He is not there by choice. The Roman Empire put him there, exiled to a prison island called Patmos, where the ground is hard and the wind never stops. He is in his 90s. His friends are dead. The movement he gave his life to has been outlawed. And one Sunday morning, alone on that rock, something happens to him that he cannot explain and cannot survive standing up. He hears a voice, and the voice is so overwhelming, like the sound of many waters, like a trumpet, like nothing a human throat has ever produced, that the old man collapses, face down, on the volcanic rock, unable to move. Then, something touches his right shoulder, and the voice says two words. We will come back to those two words, but not yet. Because to understand what they meant to that old man on that rock, you have to go back, way back. Back to a night when a soldier sat alone in his tent, afraid that the battle he just won was going to get him killed. Back to a woman dying in a desert with her son in her arms. Back to 2 million people standing at the edge of a sea with an army behind them and nowhere to go.
Because here is what most people miss about the Bible and fear. They will tell you there are 365 fear nots in the Bible, one for every day of the year. Some say 366, one for leap year too. It is a beautiful idea. It is also wrong. Depending on which translation you read, the exact phrase fear not or do not be afraid appears somewhere between 80 and 125 times, not 365. But here is what that number actually means. Every single one of those moments is a crisis, not a precaution, not a wellness tip. Every single time God, or an angel speaking for God, says those two words, there is a specific human being in front of them who is already terrified, already collapsed, already convinced that this is the end. God does not say fear not to people who are doing fine. He says it to people who are falling apart. This is the story of those people. And if you have ever been one of them, if you have ever sat in a hospital waiting room or opened a bank statement you could not afford to read, or watched something you loved come apart in your hands, then this story is about you too.
The first time God says it in the Bible, it is night. Abram, not yet Abraham, not yet the father of nations, just a man in his 70s who left everything he knew because a voice told him to, is sitting alone in his tent. And he is afraid. You have to understand what just happened. Abram just fought a war. 4 kings against 5 kings, a coalition battle in the valley north of the Dead Sea. And Abram led 318 of his own trained men into the middle of it to rescue his nephew Lot. He won. He brought Lot home. He refused the spoils of war because he did not want anyone saying a pagan king made him rich. And now he is sitting in the dark, wondering if those 4 kings are coming back. Because that is what kings do. You humiliate them on the battlefield, and they come back with twice the army. Abram has no army. He has 318 men, and a promise from a God he has been following for years, without a single piece of physical evidence that the promise was real. No land yet, no sun yet, no nation yet. Just a voice, and a tent, and the night wind, and the sound of his own heartbeat. And into that specific darkness, God speaks. Fear not, Abram. I am your shield.
The Hebrew word translated fear here is yareh. It does not mean the mild discomfort of uncertainty. It means the full body experience of dread, shaking knees, cold hands, the kind of fear that makes your mind run calculations it cannot finish. Abram was not anxious. Abram was terrified. And God does not say, calm down, you're overreacting. God does not say, I have already worked out the details, stop worrying. God says, I am your shield. Present tense, right now, in this darkness, with this fear still in your chest, I am standing in front of you. That is the first fear not in the Bible. And already the pattern is forming. But stay with me, because the second one is harder. Her name is Hagar. She is not a patriarch. She is not a hero. She is an Egyptian slave woman who was given to Abram by his wife Sarai, given the way you give a tool, to produce an heir that Sarai could not. She produced that heir. His name was Ishmael. And then, years later, when Sarai finally had her own son, Isaac, the dynamics of the household shifted in the way that dynamics always shift when power changes hands. Sarai told Abram to send Hagar away, and Abram did. Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, writes about the wilderness of Beersheba where Hagar was cast out, a brutal stretch of desert in the Negev where the heat is physical and the water runs out fast. Hagar walked until the water in her skin was gone, and then she put her son Ishmael under a shrub and walked about a bowshot away because she could not watch him die. She sat down in the sand and she wept.
This is the lowest moment in the book of Genesis. Not the fall, not the flood. This. A mother, alone in a desert, listening to her child cry, knowing she cannot help him, having already turned her face away so she does not have to see the moment it stops. And into that moment, not into a tent, not into a battlefield, into a desert where a child is dying, the angel of God calls to Hagar from heaven. What is wrong, Hagar? Fear not. What is wrong? As if the angel already knows. As if the question is not a request for information, but a signal. I see you. I know exactly where you are and what is happening, and I have not looked away. God did not look away from Hagar. He opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Right there, in the desert she thought was empty. The water was there the whole time. She just could not see it. And now Moses. And now 2 million people.
700 years pass. The nation that crossed the Red Sea on dry ground, the nation that watched the sea close over Pharaoh's army, that ate bread that fell from the sky, that drank water from a rock, that nation is gone. Not destroyed, scattered. The Babylonian Empire came in waves, and by 586 BC, Jerusalem was rubble. The temple was ash. The people who survived the siege were marched east in chains, 1,000 miles from home, to live as exiles in a country that did not speak their language and did not worship their God. And into that exile, into the worst national catastrophe in Israel's history, the prophet Isaiah writes something that should not make sense. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. The specific Hebrew phrase God uses here is al-tira, 2 words, a negative particle and a verb.
Not you, Israel, not you, the nation. The Hebrew grammar shifts to singular. You, one person, called by name, owned, not in the sense of property, but in the sense of belonging. The way a father says, "You are mine," to a child who is lost and found again. God says this to a people who have been marching in chains for a generation, who have watched their city burn, who have buried their grandparents in foreign soil. And he says, I know your name. You are still mine. Do not be afraid. Pay attention to this, because the pattern is deepening. Now we move to a man named Daniel, and Daniel's fear not is different from every other one in the Bible, because Daniel was not afraid of a situation. Daniel was afraid of what he saw. The book of Daniel, chapter 10. Daniel has been fasting for 3 weeks. No meat, no wine, no oil. Mourning over a vision he received that he does not fully understand. He is standing on the bank of the Tigris River when the sky changes. He looks up and sees a figure whose body is like beryl, whose face is like lightning, whose eyes are like flaming torches, whose arms and legs gleam like polished bronze. and whose voice sounds like the roar of a crowd. Every man with Daniel runs. They do not see the figure, but they feel something, and they flee and hide. Daniel is left alone, and the vision drains him so completely that his strength leaves him. His color turns deathly pale, and he retains nothing. He falls on his face. Then a hand touches him and raises him to his hands and knees, and the angel speaks.
Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard. From the first day, 3 weeks Daniel fasted and received nothing. 3 weeks of silence that felt like abandonment. And the angel arrives and says, "We heard you on day 1. There were things happening that you could not see. The battle was real. The delay was not indifference." Daniel is so overwhelmed that the angel has to strengthen him twice before he can stand. And even then, Daniel says he has no breath left in him. And the angel touches him a second time. "O man greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and courageous." O man greatly loved. Daniel, who just spent 3 weeks in silence, wondering if his prayers were bouncing off the ceiling, is addressed by a heavenly messenger as a man greatly loved. Before he does anything further, before he accomplishes anything else, just, you are loved. Be strong. Here is the part nobody tells you.
A priest named Zechariah is in the temple in Jerusalem. He has been a priest his entire life. He knows the liturgy. He knows the incense ritual. He knows every square inch of that building. And on this particular day, the lot has fallen to him. The lottery that determined which priest would enter the holy place to burn incense before the Lord. A once-in-a-lifetime honor. Some priests never received it at all. Zechariah goes in alone. Standing at the right side of the altar of incense is an angel. Now, watch what happens next. Zechariah, a man who has spent his entire career in service of the God of Israel, who knows the scriptures, who knows that angels are real, who believes everything he has been taught, sees an angel, and the text says he is troubled, and fear falls upon him. A lifetime of theology and the actual presence of God still drops him to his knees. The angel says, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah." By name. Again. Not, "Do not be afraid, priest." Not, "Do not be afraid, old man." Do not be afraid, Zechariah. The God who called Abram by covenant and Israel by name, and Daniel greatly loved. This God knows the name of an elderly country priest standing alone in a temple in a city the Roman Empire barely bothered to notice. And what the angel tells him next will change the world. But there is one more person to meet first. Because there is a teenage girl in a hill town in Galilee, and she is about to receive the same 2 words. Her name is Mary. She is probably between 13 and 16 years old. She lives in Nazareth, a village so insignificant that when a man named Nathanael hears the Messiah might come from there, his response is, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" That is what Nazareth is, a place people make jokes about. Mary is engaged to a carpenter named Joseph. Her life is mapped out the way lives in first-century Galilee were mapped out. Marriage, children, work, synagogue, death. Not a bad life, a small life, a life with clear edges. And then the angel Gabriel walks into it. Luke does not tell us where Mary is when it happens. He does not tell us what time of day it is or what she was doing. He just says Gabriel came to her and greeted her. And the greeting itself is so strange. "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you," that Mary is greatly troubled and tries to reason out what kind of greeting this could possibly be. She is doing theology in real time, trying to think her way through an encounter her mind was not built to process. And Gabriel says, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God."
The Greek here is me phobeo, present imperative. In Greek grammar, the present imperative with a negative particle
does not mean don't start being afraid. It means stop the fear that is already happening. Mary is already afraid. The command is addressed to a fear already in motion, already in her chest, already running through her body. Stop, right now, in this moment. Do not be afraid. And then Gabriel tells her what is about to happen to her body, her reputation, her engagement, her entire mapped-out life. She will conceive a child by the Holy Spirit. The child will be the Son of God. Her fiancé does not know yet. The village does not know yet. No one will believe her. And Mary, 13, maybe 16, in a nobody town, in a nobody province of the Roman Empire, says yes. Be it unto me according to your word. 6 words. That is all. 6 words that required more courage than any battle in the Old Testament, because Abram had God's voice to follow, and Moses had a burning bush, and Israel had the plagues of Egypt as evidence. Mary had an angel she had never seen before, a promise no human had ever received before, and a town that would not understand. She said yes anyway. 3 months pass in the narrative, and now it is night again, the way so many of these moments are night. And outside the town of Bethlehem,
And the night explodes. An angel of the Lord appears, and the glory of the Lord shines around them. Luke uses a specific phrase for their reaction. They feared a great fear. The Greek doubles the word, verb and noun together, to communicate that what these shepherds experienced was not surprise, not alarm, not concern. Terror. Absolute, full body, no exit terror. And the angel says, fear not. To shepherds, not to kings, not to priests, not to scribes or Pharisees or anyone whose name would appear in official records. To the men who spent their nights on cold hillsides with animals, who were considered ceremonially unclean by the religious establishment, whose testimony was not admissible in a Jewish court of law because shepherds were not considered reliable witnesses. God announces the birth of his son to people the world had decided did not count. Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. All the people. Not some of the people. Not the right people. All of them. And the first ones to hear it are the ones nobody would have chosen. Here is what 30 years look like, compressed into a single sentence. The child is born, grows up, learns the Torah, works in a carpenter shop, and one day walks into the Jordan River and comes back out changed. He calls 12 men to follow him. He teaches on hillsides and in synagogues and on boats. He heals people the religious establishment had given up on. And one night, on the Sea of Galilee, in the middle of a storm, he does something that even his closest friends are not ready for.
The disciples are in a boat. Jesus sent them ahead while he went up a mountain alone to pray. The wind comes up. The Sea of Galilee is famous for sudden storms. The geography of the basin funnels wind down from the surrounding hills without warning. And by the time the 4th watch of the night arrives, somewhere between 3 and 6 in the morning, the disciples have been rowing against the wind for hours. They are exhausted. They are soaked. They are losing. And then they see something on the water. A figure walking toward them on the surface of the sea. The text says they were terrified and cried out in fear because they thought it was a ghost. These are men who have seen Jesus heal the blind, men who watched him feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread, men who have heard him teach with an authority that made the Pharisees go quiet. And they see him walking on water in the dark, and their first thought is, something is wrong. Because there are moments when fear bypasses everything you know, when your body reacts before your theology can catch up, when even people who have witnessed miracles look at the impossible and think they are seeing a threat. And Jesus, walking on the water, in the storm, at 4 in the morning, calls out to them, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Me phobeo. Again, stop the fear that is happening right now.
I am here. It is me.
Peter asks if he can walk on the water too. Jesus says, "Come." Peter gets out of the boat. He walks. And then he looks at the wind, not the water, the wind, and he starts to sink. And he cries out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reaches out his hand and catches him. Immediately. No delay, no lecture, no "I told you so." The hand comes out before Peter finishes the sentence. That is what fear not looks like in action. Not a theology, not a promise about the future, a hand, right now, in the water. Now we move to a city called Corinth, and to a man who should, by any reasonable measure, not be afraid anymore. His name is Paul. He has survived a stoning in Lystra that left him for dead. He has been beaten with rods in Philippi and thrown in prison and led a midnight worship service with his feet in stocks. He has been shipwrecked. He has been chased out of cities by mobs. He has debated philosophers in Athens and watched most of them walk away unimpressed. Paul has seen more of God's power in action than almost any human being alive. And in Corinth, a city that was sophisticated and skeptical and sexually corrupt and deeply hostile to the gospel, Paul is afraid. We know this because of what God says to him. One night in Corinth, the Lord speaks to Paul in a vision, and the first thing he says is, "Do not be afraid." Which means Paul was afraid. The man who wrote, "I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content." The man who said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," is sitting in Corinth at night, afraid. Probably afraid that the city will destroy him. Probably afraid that he is losing. Probably afraid that the message is not landing, that the church is too small, that the opposition is too strong, that he does not have enough left to give. And God says, "Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. For I am with you, and no one will attack you to harm you. For I have many in this city who are my people." I have many in this city who are my people. Paul cannot see them yet. They are not in the church yet. They do not know they belong to God yet. But God already knows their names. Paul stays in Corinth for 18 months, the longest he stays anywhere in the book of Acts. The fear did not disappear, but he stayed anyway. Now we go back to the old man on the rock. His name is John. He is the last surviving member of the original 12 disciples. Every other man who walked with Jesus, who ate with him, who heard his voice, who touched his hands after the resurrection, is dead. Peter was crucified upside down in Rome. James was beheaded by Herod. Matthew, Thomas, Bartholomew, Simon, gone. One by one, across 40 years, the witnesses have been silenced. John is the last one. The Roman Emperor Domitian has exiled him to Patmos, a small volcanic island in the Aegean Sea, about 13 miles long, rocky and windswept, used by Rome as a penal colony for political prisoners. Eusebius, the 4th century church historian, records that John was sent there during the reign of Domitian, and that he had already survived an attempt to execute him in Rome, plunged into boiling oil, the tradition says, and walked out unharmed. So Rome did the next best thing. They put him on a rock in the middle of the sea and waited for him to disappear. John is in his 90s. He has no congregation, no co-workers, no letters arriving from the churches he helped plant. He is alone on a black volcanic island, and every morning he wakes up and the empire is still there, and his friends are still dead, and the churches he loves are being persecuted, and he cannot help any of them. And then comes the Sunday morning that changes everything. John is praying. He calls it being in the Spirit on the Lord's Day, when he hears behind him a voice like a trumpet. He turns, and what he sees is so far beyond human language that he spends the next 3 verses reaching for metaphors and arriving nowhere near it. A figure in a long robe, a golden sash, hair white as wool, white as snow, eyes like a flame of fire, feet like burnished bronze refined in a furnace,
a face like the sun shining in full strength. And in his right hand, 7 stars. And from his mouth, a sharp 2-edged sword. And his voice like the roar of many waters. John, who leaned against Jesus at the Last Supper. John, who stood at the foot of the cross when every other disciple had run. John, who reached the empty tomb first and believed. John, who has known Jesus longer than almost anyone alive, hears that voice and falls at his feet as though dead. As though dead. Not overwhelmed, not moved to tears, not filled with joy, as though dead. The full weight of the presence of the risen Christ, unfiltered at full intensity, drops the last eyewitness to the floor like a body with no bones left in it. And then, a right hand.
Me phobeo. Stop the fear that is happening right now in your body, on this floor, on this rock. The same words Gabriel used with Mary, the same words Jesus used on the water. The last fear not in the entire Bible, spoken to a 90-year-old man lying face down on a prison island, who has lost everything except his life, addressed by the same Jesus he watched die on a cross 60 years before. And then Jesus tells him who he is. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I have the keys of death and Hades. I have the keys. Not death has the keys. Not the empire has the keys. Not the grave has the keys. The man standing on this volcanic rock in the Aegean Sea, holding the last surviving disciple with his right hand, he has the keys. John picks up his pen, and he writes the book of Revelation. That is what fear not produces. Not comfort, not relief, not the absence of difficulty. The last fear not in the Bible is spoken to a man on a prison island. And what comes out of it is the most explosive, violent, glorious, terrifying vision of the future ever committed to paper. John does not get rescued from Patmos. He writes there. He witnesses there. He finishes there. The fear did not disappear, but he wrote anyway. Now, 3 things. 3 things this entire journey, from Abram's tent to Hagar's desert, to the Red Sea, to Babylon, to Daniel's Riverbank, to a temple in Jerusalem, to a village in Galilee, to a hillside outside Bethlehem, to the Sea of Galilee, to the streets of Corinth, to a volcanic rock in the Aegean. 3 things this journey has shown you that you cannot unsee. The first is this. God never says, "Fear not," to people who are not afraid. Not once, not in the entire Bible. He does not speak this word as a precaution or a principle or a theological position. He speaks it to a specific person in a specific moment of specific terror. Which means, and this matters more than it might seem, that your fear is not disqualifying. It is not evidence that your faith is too small, or your trust is too weak, or your God is too distant. Every single person in this story was afraid. Abram was afraid. Hagar was afraid. Moses was afraid. Daniel fell on his face. Zechariah's knees went out. Mary was troubled in her spirit. The shepherds experienced a great fear. Peter sank. Paul sat in Corinth at night and could not find his courage. John fell as though dead. These are not people who failed to be afraid. These are the people the Bible holds up as examples of faith. Fear is not the opposite of faith. In the Bible, fear is often where faith begins. The second thing. Every fear not in this story is followed by the same 3 words in different forms. I am here. Not, here is my plan. Not, here is the timeline. Not, here is a theological framework that will help you process your anxiety. I am here. Abram, I am your shield. Hagar, I see you. Israel, I am your God. Daniel, you are greatly loved. Mary, you have found favor. Shepherds, good news for all people. Peter, it is I. Paul, I am with you. John, I am the first and the last. Every single response is the presence of God, not the explanation of God. Which means that when you are in the middle of the thing you are in the middle of, when the diagnosis has come back, when the relationship has ended, when the money has run out, when the dream has collapsed, when you are sitting in your own version of a desert with your own version of a dying child, and you have already turned your face away because you cannot watch, the answer is not more information. The answer is a presence. And the presence has a name. The third thing. None of these people stopped being afraid before they acted. Hagar did not stop weeping before she looked up and found the well. Moses was afraid when he raised the staff over the Red Sea. Mary said yes while she was still troubled. The shepherds went to Bethlehem while the fear was still fresh in their bodies. Peter got out of the boat before he trusted the water. Paul stayed in Corinth for 18 months, and the fear did not vanish. It just stopped being the deciding factor. John fell as though dead, and then he picked up his pen. You do not have to wait until the fear is gone. You just have to move while it is still there. That is the pattern. That is what the God of Scripture does with frightened people. He does not remove them from the hard place. He enters the hard place with them. He says their name. He says 2 words. And then he asks them to do something impossible. And somehow, because the hand is already reaching down, because the presence is already there, because the voice has already spoken, somehow they do it. Abram trusted. Hagar looked up. Moses raised his staff. Israel took a step toward the sea. Daniel stood. Zechariah believed. Mary said yes. The shepherds ran. Peter stepped out. Paul stayed. John wrote. And whatever you are facing right now, whatever version of a dark tent or an empty desert or an impossible sea is in front of you, the same voice that found every one of those people is looking for you. Fear not.